Welcome back to the show, everybody. Check out these headlines. We got Digital Currency Group. You're going to want to catch up on that news. Stuart Alderati talking about the Supreme Court. And we got this post-judgment settlement possible. We're going to hear from John Deaton about whether those Hinman emails are really coming out or not. Janet Yellen talking about more bank mergers, so you know what that means, more bank runs. Then we got one of the biggest investors telling us about the asset bubble staring us in the face. And did you forget about BRICS in Saudi Arabia? Well, you're not going to want to forget. We got Ripple partner news you can't wait to hear. We got XRP price target scenarios, and I like them all. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube for exclusive content. Right now, it's $1.17 trillion market cap for crypto. The market is off by 0.4%. Bitcoin, 26,800 plus, 1818 and change for Ethereum, and Tether market cap is 82.9 billion plus here. XRP is 46 cents. The market is off on the 24-hour by 2%, and we're up 7.5 on the 7-day. Let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Glimp Pay. You may have heard of it, but you haven't clicked the link underneath the video. Why haven't you done it? We're going to hear some news today that might incentivize you to consider it heavier than you have been. Buy, save, send, and spend real gold instantly with Glimp. This is a way for you to create your own alternative to banking. I'm telling you, once you get it, you'll be so glad you did, but you got to click the link to see if it's right for you. Check out my sponsor. By the way, doing a sale and a special offer right now, 50% off your vaulting fees for a year if you click and join. So don't mess around. Click that link. Here we go. Digital Currency Group. You may have remembered the little fight and spat that Gemini had with Barry Silbert and Digital Currency Group about the money they were owed. Well, it looks like they've missed a $630 million payment owed to Gemini last week. We will keep you up to date on that as it develops. Right here, Stuart Alderati says the Supreme Court's Andy Warhol lithograph case got attention last week. Did you know that in 1976, the SEC said that art lithographs, even when sold for investment, are not securities when they are no post-sale contractual obligations from the seller in favor of the buyer? Come on in. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, that sounds a lot like an NFT or crypto sale, doesn't it? It really does. Shout out to Stuart Alderati. And this here is a thread that was happening over the footnote language, I believe, if I'm following this thread correctly, and I believe that I am, over the language that was found by John Deaton in the footnotes that we covered over the weekend and late last week about the remarks saying that XRP was not a security and did not meet the Howey test. However, it is being debated here in a civil way here where it says John Deaton has said the SEC wanted all statements by the SEC staff redacted, and it appears they all were. What this tells me is that the statement about XRP not satisfying the Howey test is a direct quote from a senior official. Otherwise, it would have been redacted. And then Bill says here, I don't recall the redactions to the Hinman emails allowed by Judge Netberg being this wide. And then Jeremy quotes down here, says down here, the quoted language in Ripple's brief could be an SEC lawyer quoting from someone else. That's how I read it initially. An SEC lawyer quoting an outside lawyer or opinion verbatim would not have fallen under the redaction order. So that could be how that language was admitted into the footnote itself. So we'll have to keep an eye on that to see if anything else solidifies from that conversation. And thank you to those gentlemen for it. And speaking of conversation here, this is Eleanor Terrett and John Deaton, who sat down last night and had a great conversation about what to think of all of this. One of the major questions that I know I've had, as well as many other people have had, is Well, we've seen the ruling denied to seal the Hinman documents. So we're going to get to see them. But one of the big questions remains is that if there was a settlement struck between both parties, could they override that judge's decision and have those Hinman documents sealed anyway due to the settlement agreement? Well, let's listen to what John Deaton says about that.
The documents are coming out even if there's a settlement. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. So the documents are not going to lead to a settlement. And I just don't think there will be a settlement until we get a judgment from Judge Torres. Only then could there be a post-summary judgment settlement.
And there you have that. So the documents are coming out. We are going to get to see them according to the way John Deaton is seeing everything lining up here. But don't rule out the fact that if there's going to be a settlement, it would be after the summary judgment ruling by Judge Torres. So in other words, he's seeing a scenario where there's going to be some things in favor of Ripple and there's going to be some things ruled on possibly in favor of the SEC, which would cause the issues to continue on beyond the ruling of summary judgment, at least in part. And if that's the case, then that's where you would look to see some potential settlement going forward after that summary judgment ruling. Shout out to Eleanor Terrett and John Deaton for that information. Well. Janet Yellen says more bank mergers likely amid industry turmoil in meeting after meeting with over 24 executives. Can I break this down? Let me tell you what my cynical self sees here. Janet Yellen sees more bank mergers. Well, that sounds friendly, doesn't it? Oh, one bank just decide, hey, buddy, I think I might want to buy you, No, the fancy version of saying that there's going to be more bank runs and that's going to cause bank mergers and acquisitions. This kind of speak and posturing is disgusting. But at the same time, their argument for it, if they would be truthful enough to give it, is that we can't speak in such direct terms because if we do, it causes even more cascading fear and the bank run could start earlier than it would on its own, right? I mean, what else is it? And speaking of a nightmare here, Stan Druckenmiller, massive investor here. He says, I'm sitting here staring in the face of the biggest and probably the broadest asset bubble, forget that I've ever seen, but that I've ever studied. Take a listen here.
So I'm sitting here staring in the face at the biggest asset and probably the broadest asset bubble, forget that I've ever seen, that I've ever studied. It went on for 10 or 11 years, and then as the grand finale, the government spent $5 trillion on COVID. The Fed financed 60% of it, and as I just described, now we have a big hike in interest rates. It's hard to look at that constellation of factors, know that we've only had a few soft landings since 1950. All of them were preceded by what I would call proactive rather than reactive Fed policy, and believe we're going to have a soft landing.
That is disturbing to me, and I'm not saying or showing this to be an alarmist. But if nothing else, we better be prepared, right? Now, he's not saying we won't have a soft landing, and if we are going to have a soft landing, the suggestive verbiage there is that the government better certainly be proactive in doing so. Well, what does proactive look like? Because there's a lot happening around the world, and it isn't just with our economy. We also know the BRICS membership is a game changer for Saudi Arabia's economy. We also know that Saudi Arabia has the petrodollar agreement, which elevates the global reserve currency status of the U.S. dollar. This is not a small measure. Now, this whole article is good, but what it never touches on is the de-dollarization portion of Saudi Arabia joining BRICS and really starting to pull away from the petrodollar agreement. But if you come down here where it just says Saudi Arabia's access to China and India two of the world's largest markets, would facilitate increased exports and economic partnerships, leveraging technological innovation and manufacturing capabilities of BRICS members, particularly China, would accelerate Saudi Arabia's growth in these sectors. So, look, I mean, I'm showing this because we all have heard the news. The de-dollarization campaign at my house is certainly real, but so was the Plaza Accord back in the 80s. There was a de-dollarization campaign that went on there, and it caused them to come together, what they called the Plaza Accord, and they brought the dollar down to ease the pain in other countries. That's exactly what happened, right? So they literally, revalued the dollar back then. That could happen again. It's happened in the past, doesn't mean it will. But I'll tell you this, when I'm looking at all of this information, one of the larger things about this is that the U.S. is tolerating these actions from their ally who has the agreement with the petrodollar. If this ally didn't have the, at least behind the scenes, blessing of the United States, there would be turmoil jumping off in Saudi Arabia right now. That's what history's told us in the past. You don't do things like this and break agreements with one another like this in the face of each other without even discussing it. So in some regard, I have to believe that this is a coordinated effort amongst all the countries, U.S. included. And I also happen to believe that the de-dollarization talk hopefully doesn't take us to a collapse, but I think is a broader conversation to deal with the underpinning of all of this about the dollar, which is trade, which is payments, which is how you move value and money around the world, which is why I believe it is referenced that they will be leveraging the technology that's available, the technology innovation, right? Now, what's interesting about all of this to me is that when you think of this happening, think about the fractionalized payment zones that are being created. SWIFT is built on top of decades and decades and decades old technology. They are quickly trying to change and standardize. But we also know that there are groups and factions around the world like BRICS and many other countries looking to join, like Saudi Arabia, that can strengthen them with the numbers, not only in the GDP, but in population and natural resources. I think the larger conversation under the de-dollarization talk is the payment rails which all the value will move across around the world going forward. And I believe that is something that XRP Ledger can play a big role in. And speaking of that role, this here from Matthew Liney, Tranglo, Lulu Money augment cross-border payouts. Both companies are Ripple partners. Shout out to Tranglo and Lulu for doing what they do, showing what the world is possible with Ripple. Ripple Investment in Tranglo has partnered with Lulu, and this has created a way to simplify and accelerate cross-border transaction time. No specific corridors given. Small note, the products of each are also mentioned. It says here, Tranglo Connect is a cross-border payment solution integrating payout partner services in a end-to-end payment process with API access in 30 countries. Lulu runs Digit 9, an API-first model for remittance as a service, allowing financial institutions to offer services to other FIs in 10 countries. How about that? But what I find more exciting even than the application of those things from those companies, which is very exciting because it's real use case, commercial use, like no other. But then to turn around and be celebrated, because we know recently that Ripple announced their relationship to do the pilot for the EHKD in Hong Kong Monetary Authority for real estate tokenizations with CBDCs and DeFi, by the way. And it's being celebrated by the Digital Pound Foundation in the UK. It's also being celebrated by the Digital Euro Association. Now you have to simply ask yourself, Would the Digital Euro Association, representing 27, 29 nations, and the Digital Pound Foundation be celebrating Ripple over these things and then not participating in the use of it either? Let's take a look at what's going on here with price. EggRag Crypto right here. XRP midterm target, 85 cents, $1, $5.50, and $6.40. Let's go down the line here. We see, however, we can still fill the yellow triangle, which is ranging between 37 cents to 50 cents. Target 1, 85 cents to $1 is the measure moved above the W formation. 85 cents non-algorithmic measured move, and $1 is the logarithmic measured move. It says here, target 2, $5.50 is measured move of the symmetrical triangle, blue color triangle. He's measuring here, and then move that line to there, from there, right? And $6.40 is the fib 1.618, which is a very, very popular target right there. So we'll take a look at that. And then let's look at this too, because this looks at a different set of charting tools, which is the Gaussian channel and the ABC. Could either break to $3.30 or have a massive breakout to $250. Before reading this post, I need to reread the post backdated on May 10th, 2023, in order to remember the logic behind this technical analysis. So far, XRP is still in alignment between A and B. And you can see the A and B channels that are referenced in here. We'll take a look at that in a second here. Of both previous cycles. Observations. 1. If XRP keeps on ranging near the mid of the Gaussian channel, then it is more prone to behave similar to cycle B, and that imitation of price action is shown in the yellow pattern, and will take XRP to about $3.30. 2. If XRP drops drastically and goes to the low end of the Gaussian channel and even lower, then it is more prone to behave similar to cycle A, and the imitation of price action is shown in the yellow pattern, and it will take XRP to $250. Let's take a look at this just to get a better idea of what's going on here. So you can see the A, the B, and then the C here. And if we go over here, we can see the A and the B. So if it were to go to the lower side, right, or even below, like he said, that's when you look for a possibility for that really, really huge breakout that could take it to a drastic number that all of us certainly are waiting for one day. But the reality is we may get the smaller breakout, which takes us closer to the all-time high that XRP had. However, charts are indicators. They're not absolute predictors. So all of this could fail and it just drop or run sideways. Don't forget, these are all possible scenarios. None of them are predictions. So, not financial advice from me or anyone else. It's just my digital perspectives. I'll catch all of you on the next one.